Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's just now exactly 2 o'clock. I'm going to give a few more minutes because I don't think most people are here yet. But thanks for joining us. Just hang tight, and we will begin today's What's Up in the Watershed in just a few minutes. So hang tight. All right, we've given everyone that extra minute. I'm sure that people will continue coming on. So that'll be great. So welcome to today's What's Up in the Watershed. This is our webinar series put on by the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. I'm Heather Stapleton, one of three community engagement coordinators for the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. And today's guest is Tori Wilcox. She is the conservation or one of the conservation restoration coordinators for Restore Our Shores program. That's a program that's out of Brevard Zoo. The program does all kinds of really good hands-on field work for the benefit, the health of the Indian River Lagoon, everything from seagrasses to oysters to clams. And today we are highlighting their most recently completed buffer zone projects. And Tori had a huge role in on those four. I'm really excited. This is something that I think is really accessible and something that lots of people could do to help the lagoon. You don't necessarily have to be on a waterfront. And so, with further ado, I'm really excited for Tori to take over and talk to us about the Restore Our Shores buffer zone projects. Oh, I'm sorry, just as a reminder, if you have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A, and I'll be monitoring those so that Tori can go ahead and present. Thank you so much for being here, Tori.
Thank you. All right, awesome. So I'll head straight into it. Heather just did an awesome intro there, basically about who we are, what we do. So we are the conservation team for Brevard Zoo, and we look after all the wildlife type things outside of the zoo. So just a quick brief thing if you don't know about us. So far, some of the things we've done, we've since 2014. Over 100 reefs have been built throughout the county with lots of oysters that are actually helped to be grown by hundreds of residents up and down the lagoon. We've actually planted over 10 million clams down the Indian River Lagoon as well, and over a mile of mangroves, and then a construction of two seagrass nurseries, and we've planted over 23 experimental seagrass plots. So we have a lot going on there. But yes, like Heather said, today we are going to be focusing on buffer zones, which, yep, definitely my most favorite. There is so many benefits to this, and here we go. So the reason why we do it is because in the last um, 50 years, there's been over a 250% population increase. So if you look here, the first map picture in the circle, and then compare it to the second one, you can see how much Brevard County has expanded. Now, the Indian River Lagoon is supposed to be it's just short of 157 miles long, and Brevard County itself is 70% of that. So in 2014, there was a big call out. The UCF were building reefs. They asked for us to help them because we have a bunch of volunteers that help with the zoo. And then the council were like, hey, we're going to need help, doing this more, like more reefs, clams, all these different things that can help with the water quality. So that's where Restore Our Shores became. And basically what happened in the water, it was the eutrophication cycle. So there's an increase of nutrients, which will go over multiple things such as, pesticides, fertilizers, all kinds of things going in there, not just your standard plastics that people think of as pollution. And even things of just like grass. So we think of nutrients as really positive for us, but if you have too many of something, it can cause an influx in other things. So basically, even if some people think, well, I don't put pesticides and fertilizers on my grass, but if you cut your grass and let the grass clippings flow down or blow off onto the side of the road, it's going to rain And then where's the rain going to take it? To the stormwaters, like the drains, and then where they're going to go? Into the Indian River Lagoon. And now, like I just said, we had over a 250% population increase. There's definitely going to be an increase of grass going in there. So even if you don't live on the edge of the lagoon, you can still affect the lagoon. So it's always something to think about. Maybe put your grass clippings back on the grass, let it naturally soak in there and be nutrients for your grass to grow, or you could compost it. So like I said, there was increased nutrients, then it causes harmful algae blooms, and then it's a decrease in seagrass because the seagrass needs the sunlight to grow. And then obviously it's causing this like film across the top. And then there's no seagrass, there's no habitat for the fish. So there's fish getting killed, there's no oxygen being supplied. And then basically the wildlife decreases. And then it's this vicious cycle over and over. So with us building all the reefs and everything like that, it's definitely been helping, clean up. So oysters can filter maybe up to 50 gallons a day, like one, just one, up to that. So that's the reason we do all those projects. But buffer zones, my favorite one, the reason we were doing buffer zones, it was to help infiltrate the nutrients before they even get into the lagoon. So, for example, you could, if you live by the waterside, you could have a buffer zone along there, and it'll hopefully catch some of the water flowing down or any litter or debris flowing there, and it'll catch it all. Or hopefully it'll soak it up and take up those extra nutrients before it goes in the lagoon, or even in just your own garden and you don't live by the lagoon because you could live near a swale or near some kind of I don't know, drain or something where things can flow down. So it could help take that up. So how we got involved in this, the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program, we'd actually done some demo sites up at Sandpoint Park, and the other one was Ugali Causeway near there. And basically, we did the demo sites just to figure out different types of plants that would be useful and what worked, what survived, and what thrived close to the water's edge, because it's a brackish water, so there's salt in the air. And there's different types of grounds as well we had to consider. And after we'd done that, Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program, they actually gave us a grant in order to achieve a number of things to help with the community and plant some buffer zones. So we picked 4 locations along the Indian River Lagoon and we planted 4 native buffer zones. And it was all basically to help with reducing the nutrient runoff and providing habitat for local wildlife. And we also engaged the community to try and take action and plant their own buffer zones. Along with that, we even went into schools and they learned about how to grow plants and they grew some plants for us to put into the buffer zones and they got involved as well. So it was a big community effort and volunteers even came out to help plant them too. So like I say here, it was Sandpoint Park at Titusville and Oars and Paddles at Indian Harbour area. So the Indian Harbour Beach. So the buffer zones, their benefits, things like um, limiting the stormwater pollution, so things like your grass clippings, your oil, your fertilizers, pesticides, even pet waste. That's something people don't think about. So some people are like, well, I don't have a garden. How can I help? If you have a pet, you might live in I don't know, like an apartment complex, but you've got a dog, for example, and it goes outside. That is extra nutrients if it rains down and washes off into the stormwater drains and then into the lagoon. So picking up your pet waste helps. Um, it also helps with reducing erosion. So depending on what plants that you put out there, it can help hold it all together. Things like mangroves are very good with that as well. And then things like habitat, food, and shelter for local wildlife. So recently we did a pollinator count at the buffer zones, and it was so fun. We got to see so many different pollinators, butterflies, birds. There was all sorts in there. Rabbits enjoying it as shelter. Lots of different types of bees. So it was a really interesting study that we did with that as well. And then they can be lower maintenance, I would say. So things like if you're planting Florida native plants, they should be able to thrive and survive in this climate and with like limited water and then high levels of water. And then you don't need things like fertilizers and pesticides. Once they are established and they've got some roots grounded, they should be able to just figure it out themselves. So, you're going to save on watering them and having to buy anything to keep them thriving. So in a sense, it can be kind of cost effective. Once they're in there and they're established, they just look after themselves. And like we say, it can provide privacy or shade, not just for the animals and the creatures, but for yourself. You know, you can plant different types of trees and shrubs and bushes and things like that. So there's lots of different types of buffer zones you can actually build. So here's just a few pictures from some of the sites when we did them. So there was the four sites that we actually did the buffer zones for the IRLNEP was the Pineapple Park, Fisherman's Landing, Geiger Point, and Kelly Park East. So if you're ever around those areas, you can go and check them out. They were all doing really, really well. We did have a big flood though recently. So Fisherman's Landing and Geiger Point did get flooded and were under for quite some time. So they've kind of been affected, but hopefully they'll grow back. And we're just going to monitor them and see if they will come back. And if not, we can obviously go back and maintain them and plants either if we need to do different plants possibly, but if not and they'll come back, then that's great too. So yeah, the picture on the left here was some of the volunteers that we got to come out, so community engagement that came out there. And then obviously there's a butterfly in that next picture, and we even had publics, they always come out a lot, and then a bird enjoying it when we first planted. So here's some quick questions for you to think about. I won't make you answer them, but just some ideas of when you want to plant your own native garden. So, for example, according to the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences, a native plant is considered to be one that has been documented to exist before European contact. You can get things like there's a newer definition for it there, but just to get you thinking, there's things like that might have got brought over. How do they know? You get all those debates. So it's there's one like a really nice plant. It's called oh, it's just slipped my mind, but I'm picturing it. It's this beautiful red and yellow. It'll come to me. But that was on the list and then it came off the list. So there's all the debates. But technically, if you want to have a guess or play a game with me here now, this is a question of a native, exotic, Florida friendly, or invasive. And usually I ask questions like, what is the Florida native flower that everybody considers? And a lot of people are like, oh, the orange tree. Well, technically, the Florida state wildflower is the coreopsis, so the tick seed. And then we have the orange one, which is Florida's state flower that we have like on our license plates, but technically not native. That comes from another country. And then we have, I think we all recognize this one, our Brazilian pepper tree. All right, so that one is invasive. So, just some ideas of some different types of buffer zones and designs you could do. So, you could have like a native garden along the lagoon. You've got a garden by a pond. Maybe if you live on a beach, it might be more sandy terrain. So, you have to consider the plants that are going to go in there. So, let's check those out. So, a native garden along the lagoon edge there. Maybe it's thinking about things like people ask questions like, do we put in mulch? Do you put in like a coquina or kind of shell in there? Um, there's pros and cons to all, really. I would say the benefits to mulch, it does help also uptake nutrients. It's really good for taking up the bacteria. I think they use them a lot. They use a lot of wood and chips and things in the baffle boxes that help clean the lagoon as well. I would advise not to maybe use things like I know it might smell good or look good for like pine needles, but if that goes in the lagoon, that ends up being excess nutrients. But if you're more inland, it might be another option. So the native garden by a pond, again, what you've got to consider there is if it does flood a little bit and it gets, the plants closer to the water's edge, they need to be flood tolerant, and we'll go into that a little bit later. And then things like there's a great beach one, it might be more like palms and shrubs that can deal with the sandy terrain and also the salty air. Then a native wildflower garden, you might just have a section. You might have a small section where you've just got some area to put lots of native flowers. They love all the different colors and smells. And another idea that we've had is on an evening, you can actually do a nighttime garden. And it's certain types of plants that moths and, other night creatures actually like to come to. So that was another idea someone had suggested. And then native grasses, shrubs, and your trees. So things like pink mullygrass is a beautiful one. It's about the time of year you're probably starting to see these along the roadside edges that come into this color right now. You get different types of grasses that maybe do better, like Spartina bakeri, closer to the water's edge. So there's, like I say, there's different types that work better in different locations. Then your native wildlife garden, again, is very similar to the butterfly one. Lots of different colors, flowers. You can think about different heights. You can think about the way you want to, have a shaded area, or you might want to have more shrubs. It's just things you need to consider is like where you're planting things in case there's any wires or anything under the ground. So I think it's 811 you maybe call to make sure there's nothing you're going to be planting over the top of. But then also consider the height of the plant because if you're planting a tree that's going to grow and you've got wires and cables above, is that going to be problems down the line? Or maybe a tree that has lots of big roots, like your oaks, is that going to start to pull up concrete? Or if you don't want to be planting it near your front door, because it's going to be pulling up anything there or going under the house. So it's kind of just looking into when you do decide to plant a native garden like this, where like right plant, right place. That's kind of like the first thing. Like, is it how far is it going to spread? How tall is it going to go? How deep are the roots going to go? What's the purpose? What's the benefit? Is it for you? Is it for the nature? Is it for stopping all the stormwater runoff? Do you just want grasses? It's so much to consider. So here we go, the considerations, the right plant, right place, and the temperature. So depending where you live in the lagoon, there is like a plant hardiness zone here. And it talks about where kind of like 9A, 9B area, going into 10A kind of, around that, but not too much. It's more like the 9A, zone 9A that we are. It always depends, there might be some plants that thrive well further north. Some that just do better down south, in the really hotter zones. But yeah, it all depends on weather as well. We tend to have a standard climate, so yeah, it's just getting a bit cooler now. And then soil type. So you get sandier areas, you maybe get marshier areas, you get things like swamp marshmallow. That's a really cool kind of bush shrub type tree that does better near a swamp. Or, like I said earlier, there's some railroad vine. You might see that when you walk on the beaches. They thrive in sand. Like they don't even really need soil or anything. Also, your dune sunflower, it has it in the name. They're on dunes. So if you live closer to a sandy area, there's options for you too. And then, like we say, consider height, spread. Are they low maintenance? Do you have the time to be going out clipping shrubs down, trees down, or are you content with just you want to plant it and let it do its thing? Then consider pets. I've got pets, and is there any that might be poisonous to a pet? You don't want them eating a cone off something like, your coontie palm. Although the coontie palm was used, apparently, it would be ground up by the natives and they'd use it as a flower. So that's other interesting things. You might want to plant like a herbal type medicinal kind of garden.
And ethnobotany garden.
Exactly, legal one. Yeah. So, and then like say shade, roots, and then consider I can never say it, perennial or annual. So, do you want to have to, they only last a year, or do they come back? You decide, do you want a little section? Again, it's all about maintenance more. If you've got the time, you might just want to have ones that just keep coming back after, every year, or you might enjoy changing it up and mixing it up. And then the layout. The layout for me is the fun part. It's considering like your different heights, how things are going to grow, the design. You've got to sort of think ahead of how things will grow and look and what you're aiming for. So that can be the fun part to it as well. And then it's time of year when they should be planted. Again, the temperature and climate and stuff here is not too bad. It might just be some struggle more when it's rainy season. If you're planting it like we've just done, some of our areas were away and high enough away from the water's edge. And then others were literally waters like height. So as soon as it rained and the lagoon lifted, it like, covered a lot of the plants. But some are still thriving. So yeah. And then how to build your buffer zone or Florida native garden. So there's a few ways you can do it. You pick your location first of all. Is it going to be near a lagoon edge? Is it going to be on before a swale? You don't want it all to flow off into the swale. You want your plants to take up all that excess water and nutrients, things like that. And then it's preparing the ground. So what we did, we took up some of the ground. Now there's multiple ways you can do that. The reason we did it this way, where we had to dig some of it out, we had to put mulch down with the whole layout and everything. And we would have loved, this is a way you can do it, where you put like you can get a natural type of, it was like a cardboard we put down that would disintegrate kind of thing. And it was fine for the environment. So it was basically like paper and you could lay it down and over time the grass would die because it's not getting the sunlight and then it would be easier to sort of dig up and it's the nutrients have gone back into that soil and then you can sort of grind it up, dig it up, till it and then plant there. But because we were doing it near the lagoon edge, we needed to get like a bit of a dig out so that when we did plant and we had mulch there, it then didn't overflow. And if it did rain and there was a big flush of water, it didn't just go straight into the lagoon. So that was the only consideration there. But you can do ways where you put your cardboard down, it naturally dies off into the ground, you get the nutrients in there too, and it helps kill off the weeds as well that way. So once we'd done that, so you can see there, we'd actually still laid down that cardboard and it helped keep the weeds away until we started planting. And then we laid the mulch. This was one of our demo sites. We did a different type of mulch this time, and we made sure it had no, chemicals in it. It was literally just wood chippings, basically. And then that's kind of what it looks like at first. It looks very sparse at first, but they grow within a few months. One of the buffer zones, like look at this picture at the end, like it's flourished. The railroad vines all like spread out. You've got your dune sunflower there and your coontie palms and things. So yeah. And then this is just an idea of your different types of grasses. So it's just to kind of go through it, where you're living. So again, near the beach, sea oats do great. Fakahatchee does really well too. Your pink mullygrass, maybe it kind of does well middle-ish, like, middle land. I've not really seen it as much on the beach side, but I have seen it at some homeowners' houses and they're flourishing. They're colorful and they do great. So they don't do too bad in that sandy soil. And then you've got another list down the side, like your sand cordgrass and Elliot's lovegrass is another cool one too. So there's a few different grasses. I'm not going to dwell on them too much because there's a list. And then ground cover. So another thing, a cool thing I always say about ground cover, because some people don't want grass. They don't want to have to cut grass. And they want low maintenance. So we just actually were at a house recently doing some of our oyster monitoring, clam gardening stuff, and their garden was full of the sunshine mimosa. It looks awesome. It's like Dr. Zeus type thing, these little cute little pink purpley flowers all over the grass. And it was all instead of grass, it was literally a full ground cover in their front yard. And frog fruit's another good one. And frog fruit can still be cut and trimmed and it'll come back. Creeping sage is a pretty one, and shoreline sea purslane is a really good one closer to the beach side or sandy kind of soils. So there are quite a few different types of ground cover if you don't want grass. And I've also had in the past people asking questions about I live in a HOA. I'm only allowed to plant these certain grasses. You could always look into it. I think there is a Florida law that allows you to plant certain, as long as the Florida natives. Obviously, don't quote me on it, but there is a specific law, and you'll have to, contact your HOA if you want to plant more colorful things like this. It's an option. Check out that law. It might help you be able to plant more native things in your front yard if you're allowed. Because again, I've had people come to me like, hey, I had this beautiful grass, and then somebody else cut their grass and it came onto my grass, and now I don't have good grass. And so it's, HOA stuff. And then vines, so that you can get some beautiful vines, ones that creep up if you want a really nice, like trellis kind of thing going on, or you've got a fence that you just want it to make a little bit more pretty and have more pollinators and stuff going on. Or you want to bring, more birds, like hummingbirds to your garden, things like coral honeysuckle, they love those. And then again, I love the railroad vine. They are so hardy around, salty, sandy grounds. Yeah. And there's another thing as well I thought about mentioning was there's also stories to some of these, like your Oh, blanket flower was the flower I was thinking of earlier. There's lots of stories, even with the passion flower, and it links to like maybe some kind of religion or a story behind it. So if you like a bit of a story kind of telling thing in your garden, there's another thing for you to think about as well. So lots of different options. Then your shrubs, again, many different ones. You get azaleas. I think they're the ones that you might just be a bit more careful with around, your pets, but they do look pretty. And, as long as your pet's not going to eat everything, it's up to you. Firebush is really pretty, like an orangey red color, and they can grow pretty big. Cocoa plum's another good one. And the Coontie palm, the reason we chose that in our buffer zone, is really attractive to is it azalea? I think it's, no, I've just forgotten the name. It's a specific butterfly, and it's a
It's
Florida native. Go on.
it's the Atala butterfly.
Atala, yes, Atala. It's because it says azalea on here. I'm reading that. Yeah, Atala butterfly, native to Florida, and it was struggling. So we're like, of course, we want to be able to have habitat for the caterpillars and the butterflies. So that's why we picked the Coontie palm, and then things like the scarlet rose mallow. Did I say marshmallow earlier? I think I might have done. But yeah, the scarlet rose mallow is another beautiful one. Looks like your hibiscus, but more near a swampy area. So if you've got more of a marshy ground. Again, there's another one. And then there's some plants that you think, I know if you go to certain stores, I won't name names, but it might be like, oh, this is a Florida native. But actually, so you see different types of viburnum. The Walters viburnum is supposed to be Florida native, but there's other viburnums that are not native. So it's kind of doing your research, which at the end I'll give you some ideas on how to research that the best. But there are some local places that do sell lots of Florida natives. Or even if you're watching this from somewhere else, check out what's native to your area, of course. And then trees. You got your different types of trees, and there's some great ones. So your cabbage palms, your different mangroves if you live really close to the water's edge. Your saw palmetto, again, that's another one. That's apparently the berries are very I don't know what the word would be, not sacred, but like they're used for medicinal purposes. So I think it was for prostate cancer, the berries from saw palmetto, sea grapes as well. Again, don't quote me here, but I'm pretty sure the last time I read it, it said it was illegal. You shouldn't pick sea grapes, unless they're maybe on your land. I think you're allowed. And I'll tell you a benefit of sea grapes, they can grow really high. And if you notice along Brevard County, there's a lot of areas that do grow these on the beach side. And the benefits are, for example, obviously you might know with the zoo, we work a lot with sea turtles, and we have the sea turtle hospital, and we release a lot of them that come into us. It's beneficial because they grow high and it blocks off the light, and sea turtles are coming in off out from the ocean thinking they're seeing the moon when they're seeing people's lights turned on. So that sea grapes were a really good one to help shade that and stop them from going too far. So that's another consideration. There's so many things. I'm trying not to overwhelm you with different ones, but it might be you see a cool looking plant and then you research it and find out, and that one draws to me, or that one I'd love in my garden. And then plants for wildlife. So there's some really cool ones. So seaside goldenrod, definitely we have that in our buffer zones. Spotted bee balm's another one. It's got bee in the name. Literally, we see lots of bees at that one, and it looks beautiful. Lots of cool colors on there. And then there's the blanket flower. So blanket flower even has its own little story. But again, that's the one that's possibly not considered a Florida native. The arguments out there. There's just, again, milkweed, so many beautiful ones, and they look good as well. So if you're going for aesthetics in your garden, there we go. There's some great ones. And Dune sunflower, again, that's another one, like I said earlier, great in the sandy soils if you've got that. And then your medicinal and edibles. So beautyberry, you can actually make jam with it, and apparently the leaves are really good for mosquito repellent. I've not had chance to try the jam, but I keep looking out to see if anyone sells it. And then your wild coffee is there too. And then again, it's back to that thing of some lantana. I think there might be one lantana that's native, but you've got to be careful because some of these can be toxic, like your lantana, your rosary pea, deadly nightshade. So also make sure you consider that. Again, like I always say with your pets or small children or something. But yeah, there's quite a few, and I think heather's a very She's got a great garden. She's always posting things of her awesome things she's growing there, so she can always add to this as well. But yeah, just remember that not all of the plants may be edible, or there might be certain ways you have to prepare it. It could be that the plant's berry is edible, the leaf isn't, or the leaf can be used as a tea, but the berries are not edible. So always make sure you research that. And again, considerations when you are doing your own buffer zone. So things like the maintenance. Do you have the time to be watering them all the time? But usually, again, if the Florida natives, they should only really need watering when you are planting them and they're trying to just get rooted and they're grounded, and then they should be able to flourish. And if you're planting at the right time of year as well. If it's going to be big downpours and you just plant a little seedling, it might just get washed away. And then there's things like natural bug deterrents, if you need them, but again, Florida natives, they should thrive and survive. And things like pruning, mulching, weeding, can you compost some of the leaves? Some leaves, I know there's some plants that you need to pull off maybe like when they go a bit yellow so that the plant's not sending all its good nutrients to the dying leaves. But then there's other plants, like more palm type trees, that you shouldn't really pull them off until they're ready to fall off. So it's even just researching those kind of things. But it's very fun. Every plant's a little bit different and needs caring for differently. Sunlight too. You might think this will be a great place to put this plant, but then hang on a minute, the sun goes from, this side to this side, and my house is going to be, putting it in shade for so long. So you have to consider that too. You might have a really boggy shaded area. So anyway, either way, wherever you're planting, and if you can, or if you don't even have a garden and you live in an apartment complex, you can even be planting your own little herbs and spices and all sorts. Even inside you can do these different types of things, or you can go out and volunteer. You can come with us and volunteer. We go and maintain some of these buffer zones. You can help us with other parts, or you can go out and help somebody else if they need help. But yeah, there's different types you can do, and just every little helps. You don't have to do the whole yard in one go. You can do little sections. You can have different designs. So yeah, and then other things just quickly before I go into questions. So other ways you can help, if again, like I say, if you do not have a garden. So if you're washing your car, consider things like where's the dirt going? Is it flowing down the road to the stormwater drain and into the lagoon? So maybe you could wash your car on the grass, and then the grass takes up some of those nutrients before it ends up flowing into the lagoon, or taking it to a car wash, and they have to dispose of it correctly. So there's options out there. There's Lagoon Loyal that you can join. There's a website. If you check them out, they have lots of lagoon friendly ways of living. And if you go onto that website, it tells you about things like you build up points. So you can get, for example, in different areas throughout Brevard County, one area might do a workshop. You go and attend the workshop, learn how to build the rain barrel, and then you get the rain barrel for free. And then you get points through Lagoon Loyal, and then you get discounts at local shops and things like that. Other areas, they might say buy the rain barrel and then send us your receipt and like a selfie, and then you get points that way. So it's just every kind of area works differently. And then there's the rain barrels. So another thing is having the rain barrels, the benefit is you're catching more of the rain instead of it flushing off into your garden or flushing straight off into a swale or down a drain. You're catching that, and then you can water your plants or utilize that when you actually need it. So that's your benefits there. And then picking up the pet waste, of course. Pesticides and fertilizers. There is actually a ban for fertilizers between June and September. But again, if you're planting Florida natives, you shouldn't really need them. And then grass clippings, I mentioned that at the start. Can you just let them fall back onto the grass and soak in and be excess nutrients for your grass, or compost it and use it for something else? And then there's things about septic systems, which again the county do, and you can look into that if you need help with that one. And then back to the start of it all, planting Florida natives. Consider where you're going to plant them, the different types of plants, and just think, right plant, right place. That's usually where it goes to, and what kind of things you want. So, yeah. Hopefully that wasn't too much or too boring. I tried to keep it short and sweet and not dwell on too much, but let me know if you've got any questions.
We do have a few questions coming
Okay.
in. And
Okay.
before I get to them though, I would like to ask, um, after you did the two initial buffer gardens,
Yes.
how did you choose the four sites?
Oh, yes. So good question. I did forget to mention this and I was just thinking about it. So what we did was the some of our team, we part of the deliverable actually, part of the actual grant was to, figure out the sites and the best places and locations to pick, just for because what we were wanting to do is show some kind of reporting or science on how they're taking up the nutrients. So we were linked with Dr. Fox at FIT, and he came out with us and he did a few test sites up and down the Indian River Lagoon where we thought would be a place where like the county would allow us to actually plant them and test them out and trial them. And then we picked that those four sites were picked based on the differences they saw over those like time frames of what nutrients were flowing, say maybe off a roadside or, literally it was on the edge of the lagoon and it was just a place where we were noticing lots of nutrients and things. And then part of it was when we actually did plant the four buffer zones, we carried on that study just to see which ones did better or differently. And I think the conclusion of it was is the time frame we could do that and see it. There was so many variables to take into account. It was very hard to see because obviously maybe one buffer zone was planted a bit sooner than another. One had a lot more foot traffic on it at first because the signs weren't there, and then just things like that. Just there was so many variables. So what we decided to do was we've actually done another study off that, which is a hydroponic study, and it's basically a more
Control.
standardized way of doing it to take as many variables out as possible of like wind and rain and floods and everything. And we are literally, I think we're starting off with sunshine mimosa and maybe railroad vine of, and it's in this enclosed system of how they take up the nutrients. So that's kind of going right now. And hopefully then we have a lot more science and we can set up a bigger one after that to be like and apply for another grant to be able to be like, right, we want to test more plants, so we've got the data now and we know that these are the most efficient at taking up nutrients.
Right. And Tori, so just to confirm, you're growing the native plants hydroponically, controlling all the variables to determine which ones do take up the most nitrogen, which ones
Yes.
do take up the most phosphorus. And
Yes.
then we can really focus on the plants that seem to take up the most.
Yes, exactly. Because it could be great. The thing is, it might look great that these plants are flourishing. You might have really good railroad vine and the grasses are looking great there, but they might not be as efficient as say the sunshine mimosa at taking up the nutrients. So it might literally be better to have that, just that plant there, for example. So that's why we wanted to trial it, we wanted to test it, and we did different tests in different areas where different plants were, because we wanted to be able to kind of have some science behind it.
I love that. We love to have the science behind
Yes.
it. But even if the plants are deemed not to be excellent nutrient uptakers, is that a word? Uptakers?
Yeah.
Um, they still have wildlife benefits, they still
Oh,
have beauty benefits, they still have erosion benefits.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and also yeah, like you say, the wildlife love it. We were there with the pollinator count, and they were using it for food, for habitat, for shelter, like all of the classic things, which again were part of conservation. We want to help the wildlife thrive and live alongside them, and we want to be able to provide that for them too. So even so, if it doesn't help with the nutrient uptake, it might. Some of the plants literally were just great for catching any debris. We were getting plastic, before it was getting into the lagoon and just things like that.
Mm.
So yeah, there's definitely benefits somewhere.
I helped participate in that the pollinator count. It was part of a much bigger thing called the Great Southeastern Pollinator
Yes,
Census, I
yes.
think it was called.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. How did you how did the buffer gardens get involved with that effort?
It was more of, I can't remember, but somehow I just saw it and I was like, oh, we need to do this. Like, we need to be a part of this. Like, we have
Right.
literally just planted Florida native plants. We have a bunch of volunteers and it all helps. This is the thing, we all try and help each other. We're all different partners all over. And this was from Georgia going on. It was all about, like you said, the Southeast Pollinate account. And it was running with like UF or all partners around the county were kind of getting involved, and I was like, we literally have the best locations for this right now. We can, and it was really interesting for us to see. Like I noticed, like this is just me noticing it, but I noticed at different points in the morning, like when there was sun on one flower and not on the same flower another time, the bees or the butterflies were just leaving them alone. And then like I'd look into the research and I was like, that's really interesting about like the different scents or the different sounds or vibrations they were giving off. And I was like, this is really cool. Like it really makes you appreciate nature and how they communicate with each other. Like it was just really cool to see.
Yeah. Here's a fun question.
Yeah.
What would be your dream lagoon-friendly garden?
Ooh, interesting.
Like what kind of plants might be
Oh,
there?
yeah, I just love all the different types of tropical ones and just the color, like all the different colors and like variations, like and in anything that attracts like the animals, like and because I just like it was so peaceful to just watch the pollinators just enjoying the plants, and I just
Yeah,
loved that. Like that just brought peace to me, and I was like, if I can do that and give back, then I like that.
right.
That was very cool.
Another question was, how can volunteers, whether they be individuals, students, community groups, how can they get involved with either the planting or perhaps maintenance or other projects that Restore Our Shores has going on?
Yeah, so there's so many ways you
I
can go about it.
so
We have
I just put the link in the chat to the
nice.
Restore Our Shores volunteer page, but if you'd
Perfect.
like to elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, so I would say go on the Restore Our Shores website. So even though like we are part of Brevard Zoo, we have our own website because there's so much things that we do out of the zoo too. So basically you go on the volunteer page and things will pop up on there and it might be like, come help us reef build or we need help with seagrass planting and clam gardening, things like that. Sometimes if things don't pop up on there and if you've got loads of time, we have a lot of people that are retired in the community that come out and help, and they just get in touch. They email us and be like, "Hey, I'm always off on a Friday. I'd love to help or something." And then we'd be like, "Okay, we'll put you on the list." And then we'll have like a separate list that if you've got a lot more availability, we can reach out to you and you can help us more regularly. Usually, and we even help with like if you know somebody that wants to do team building or bonding and stuff like that. We have a bunch of like L3 Harris, all the different like big, companies around here, they come out, do some team building, and it's great. We love it. They're my favorite days when the volunteers come out. Like it's the best. So yeah, there's that way you can do it. Literally just restoreourshores.org and yeah, and reach out or you can email one
So
of us on there.
I know that the email addresses at the zoo might be changing,
Yes.
soon-ish, but I did put the Restore Our Shores at brevardzoo.org because one thing that I found helpful was to get the email because sometimes I would forget to go to the website and look at it myself. And the
Yes.
nice thing about subscribing to the bulletin is it gets emailed, the volunteer opportunities get emailed directly to you, and you don't have to remember to go look at the
Yeah,
site.
that I was just gonna say you can sign up to like this bulletin newsletter and it'll come through to an email and you can look on it and be like, oh well I can't make those dates or oh yeah, great, I'm gonna sign up to that. So then you click on the link and sign up. So because I know,
Right.
yeah, some people just forget to check and then they're like, oh, I've got nothing to do today, and then you realize, oh, I could have
Right.
volunteered or whatever. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So I know that you mentioned two of the gardens in the most recent king tides got pretty inundated, and I saw that at Fisherman's Landing, also. When will you go out and assess what needs to be done to those two gardens that got inundated?
Yeah, so we've just been out recently and took photos just to see so we can compare. We're going to go out again maybe in the next few weeks just to take more photos to see if anything's coming back on its own because it's nature, like it's pretty hardy even with things
Right.
like that. So it's just giving it a bit of time on its own first to figure out what can thrive or not. And then we might have an event that we'll post on the website where it's like, right, you know what, we need to add some flowers to this one or plants to this one or different ones. and we might have that as an option for volunteering, or we might have some schools come and help us. So we're just gonna keep monitoring it every month or so and just check how it gets, comes back, hopefully. Like they are very hardy, some of the plants here. So
What was amazing to me is mere months after they were planted, they were thriving. I mean, even more than that picture you showed, like when we were
yeah.
out for the pollinator count, I couldn't believe how different Fisherman's Landing
Yeah.
was looking at that point.
Oh, you couldn't even see the mulch anymore. The goldenrod was
Yeah,
taller than me. And that was within like 2 or 3 months, taller than
yeah,
me. The tropical sage was thriving and smelt beautiful. Like the bees loved that. And again, there was so many different cool like colors, heights, ground cover. Like th some plants, like your Kunti palm, that's going to take years to grow big. But
right.
we kind of thought about that and was like, well, we want some plants that are going to grow bigger faster. And so yeah, but yeah, it grew quick and it was so cool.
Tori, could you go back to the slide where you have your four parks listed in
Yes.
case folks might like to visit
Check
any
them
of
out.
them?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
they
Yeah.
provide, because there was a question about, what are your recommendations for different colors and different heights to create
Mm.
that real aesthetically pleasing look?
Yeah.
And I know what I like about some of the parks that I haven't actually been to all four, but I like that you took the consideration of people do like their view of the water. And
Yes.
so when we talk about a buffer zone, we don't necessarily mean planting mangroves everywhere. I mean, yes, it's nice, of course, if we can incorporate mangroves, but knowing how the humans are also going to use that space, it's really important to not block people's view of the water. And I think you considered that in your plantings.
Yeah, so that's a really good point because say for example, we the standard kind of thing was gonna do, so if you ever go to the Kelly Park East, it was gonna be like a 10 foot wide, so 10 foot from the water's edge to the, out into the grass, and then about 100 foot long. Um, But like you just said, we considered things. So at that site, that was fine because nobody really goes there. Some people maybe stand on the wall and fish, but they kind of just go to the edges. They don't really disturb the buffer zone. And the birds love it, as you can see in that bottom right corner. The birds absolutely love it there. Whereas the one at Fisherman's Landing, we actually split it up into two 50-foot sections
Mhm.
because we thought about people wanting to take their kayaks there, or if they want to, go out on a little mini boat there or anything like that. Standard paddleboarding. So we did think about that definitely. We didn't want to bother people and be like, oh, well, now we can't even get in the water.
Right.
So we even thought about that and then the height, the views, and yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a really important component is you can have a Florida-friendly buffer zone, a lagoon-friendly buffer zone, and maybe it doesn't 100% mimic nature, but that's okay because it is a human-built environment. But the point is to try and maximize on all those other benefits, nutrient uptake, pollinator habitat, erosion control, beautiful colors to look at. I mean, like you said, the pink muley grass in the fall is probably the biggest showstopper that we
yeah,
have.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, if
Well,
anyone wants to know, I'll try and think. So hang on, we had tropical sage, scorpion's tail, blue porterweed, coontie palm, sunshine mimosa, railroad vine, pink mullygrass, spartina bakeri. God,
bee
what else?
balm.
Bee spotted bee balm. There's another three, I think. Um,
Yeah, it was a really nice
yeah,
variety.
lots of different ones, and it was kind of cool because it was just to see the differences and how, what does better where, and yeah,
Well, thank you so much, everyone in the chat. There are several resources linked in the chat. We put the Florida statue and the link to that.
yeah,
KJ, thanks to Chandler, put up the Florida Friendly Plant link. There is also the link to if you'd like to volunteer with the Restore Our Shores. And then there is that email address where you can get put to that volunteer or get added onto that volunteer bulletin. And that way you'll just receive opportunities in your inbox. But I do think it's really important to remember that Tori said if you want to come out as a team for a team building experience, then you can directly email that address and get your team scheduled to come out on a day that might be just your team if it's big enough.
yeah. And I just popped a few resources up there on the screen. So there's different things like the Florida Wildlife Foundation or the Florida Native Plant Society. Sometimes they even give away plants. and then different apps as well. So I really like Picture This, but I'm not getting paid. I'm just saying, like, I liked that one at first. I know now you can just take a photo and your phone ends up telling you what it is. So
Right.
it's whatever works for you, and there's different resources out there. I know with the Florida UF IFAS there, they actually do Florida friendly plants too. But Florida native for me is the way to go. So
Yeah, definitely more wildlife benefits for native, but I think it's important, in people's yards, you want to have a compromise solution. We don't want to
yeah,
turn people off and say, "Oh, don't plant a mango tree," for example.
yeah.
There has to be that nice
Yeah.
compromise.
And a nice little thing just to add, I think there's a really cool thing. I think it's with UF IFAS too. You can actually apply. I can't remember how much it is, not much, but you can apply and get your garden certified by them, and they'll come out and be like, "Yep, this is a Florida native garden," or they'll come out and give you ideas of what you can plant too.
Right.
So maybe reach out to them. I think they still do that, so it's kind of cool.
In Brevard and Indian River both, there are some really active chapters of the Florida Native Plant Society. I happen to be very impressed with the Conradina chapter up in Brevard. They're the ones that do the Florida Native landscaping of homes, tours, homes, and businesses. So next October, be sure and check that out as just another way to keep learning and keep helping our Indian River Lagoon.
Yes.
Tori, thank you so much for joining us. KJ will be sending out a quick little survey if people wouldn't mind to answer that. In particular, we are interested in what topics you'd like to know about next year. This is our last webinar for 2025, but you can join us again for What's Up in the Watershed starting in January. We'll be back at it. So thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tori.